The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall continue to follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the most super intelligent force and power of love and creation possible forever. And I'm just going to say it. That's been my life. Surely goodness and mercy shall continue to follow me. I added the word continue because that's been the course of Benton's life. Now, people can pick at that and say, try to pick it apart and say, well, what about this? What about that? What about it? What about it? What about your whataboutisms? Who cares? What's relevant is what has happened, what is happening, and what continues in this vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions within delusion by way of so-called human experience. What is actually happening and why or why not is evil being confronted and dealt with in America and American society. Scam nation, right? Moral depravity, social problems, wickedness and evil and victimization and predation, right? Man dominating man unto his own injury. Everywhere one looks in society. Pervasive, that's the word. Perniciousness is pervasive. Okay. Iniquity is ubiquitous in this vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions. Why? Why? I have some notes. I believe the royal we believes that we are able to address these issues, not in a way that will resolve society's wickedness, because that's not possible. That can't be done. So, of course, Moloch's machine, right? Industrial, post-industrial society. Well, of course, Moloch's machine is happy to have folks spinning their wheels, right? Oh, well, let's go out here and direct our efforts at a societal level, because who is our, who is they? Society spinning its wheels at the level of ineffectiveness in addressing these issues, while simultaneously, how does Moloch's machine incentivize the system to do what's in Moloch's machine's best interest? Because as we've discussed previously on these broadcasts, each new moment, the individual via the creative force performing, right? This is back to intelligent performance from yesterday's stream. The intelligent performance is to be properly identified within oneself internally, if, assuming, and this is a big if, setting aside for a moment the philosophy of solipsism, if the being is possessed of Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Right. Well, now we have a machine called Moloch's machine. Virtually all individuals here being sacrificed to the operation of that machine in order to achieve objectives. So the objective is the subversion of the creative force of any and all beings who may properly be said to represent the most super intelligent force and power of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, which is also representative of supreme authority or proposition or thesis this realm via Moloch's machine makes an enemy of representations of that force in this place at a level of delusion, because waking dreams, surrealistic notions of unreality must be reconciled at all times. They must be, and they're not, because that's yet another way that Moloch's machine is able to operate. And let's be clear, operating at the level of effectiveness, right? And if its operation involves service to antithesis, and antithesis is performing in specific ways, and what are the aims of antithesis or Satan, right? It's within an imagined place, right? An animated realm that cannot contain life, because what I am, the most super intelligent, the force that I'm one with, the aforementioned force, it can't ever possibly be contained within a place like this. That's not possible. That must be reconciled. See, again, this world, the indoctrination, the mind control, um, conditioning, the socialization process, psychology, the design of the psychology being designed and installed via Moloch's machine is set up to operate in such a way to get what? A specific result at the level of effectiveness via Moloch's machine, right? So when people are now beginning to get the hint, right, here in Scam Nation, a fraudulent nation, a fraudulent society, counterfeit, void, right, lacking substance, lacking the most basic ability to operate at a societal level that would serve humanity. That's not happening anywhere. You can't point me to anything going on in American society that represents society operating in a way that benefits the individual and benefits individual, regular old, um, so-called great unwashed masses of humanity in America. There's nothing. The system does absolutely nothing. Now, this is where the blame the victim and the what's probably a reverse entitlement comes in. Is, well, who are you? Who are the masses to come here and do anything but work hard and get some crumbs? You got to earn everything in this life. Oh, really? What has Amazon earned? What did Sam Walton earn? Did Sam Walton hard work himself to the top of society? I don't think so. See? No, that did not happen. He did not outwork and um, grind his fingers to the bone just slightly better than all of his other potential Sam Waltons in the world, who were all simultaneously um, operating retail establishments, and they were all competing with each other in a meritocracy where the cream rises to the top. Are you crazy? Because I've never looked around and seen that. Now, that's the story told via Moloch's machine. That's simply not reality. That's simply not what happened. Look at Amazon. You really think Amazon went from an online bookseller that it took, um, I don't know what, like a decade to show any earnings? That they just, now they're worth, double what Walmart's worth with market cap? Hell, it might be more. I haven't looked at the figures lately. Does that sound possible to anybody? But it was done through Jeff Bezos as a hard motherfucking worker. That goofy guy. You go back and look at him interviewed in the early days. That goofy guy, that's who outcompeted other Americans. That goofy dude, right? Are you crazy? Well, yeah, probably you are. And I don't mean you, the listener. I'm talking about your typical American is crazy enough to believe all of that and to move forward based on lies. Well, in a world of death and games of lies, of how could it be any other way? How could it be any other way? See, and this again, reconciliation. This is where the logic, the logic and the reason come into play, and individuals not reconciling all of this. See, and why don't they reconcile any of this? It's the same reason that evil and wickedness and scams and the elderly getting preyed upon by romance scammers and Nigerian princes and all of these things. You know, grandmas in Iowa having their life savings vacuumed out of their bank accounts. You know, because Moloch is pleased by this. This is what Moloch enjoys. See, because Moloch, the demonic entity, right? What is a demonic entity? What does it do? It derives pleasure through human suffering. It derives pleasure through humans within themselves degrading and becoming depraved and fallen in ways that allow these entities, these spirits, to prey upon them, that the spirit is then rewarded, quote, rewarded with being able to continue to enjoy its particular flavor of iniquity, which is ubiquitous in society. And people can go ahead and say, yeah, it's all the Democrats' fault. It's all the Democrats' fault. That's fine. Wipe away the Democrats later today, and you're going to find that it's the same level of evil and wickedness, because we're going per capita. And if you eliminate those people, the level of evil doesn't lower, right? It's still the same level of evil. And obviously, Democrats and Republicans are moral equivalents, obviously. Because if one group had a moral high ground and the other group was decadent and depraved, then eventually would not the moral group win out over the immoral group? Isn't that how things would work, folks? Isn't that the teachings of the Christian church? So I just use logic and reason to prove that they are the same morally. And that's how Moloch's machine designed it. So that when Benton speaks these words, most of the people who listen to this channel will say, well, yeah, that's all true, Benton, and it's Democrats done it to us. Oh, you mean an externality did it to you? And that's why, and I don't mean you, the listener, this is the exact reason why people are unable to address evil and wickedness in society. They lack the ability. Individuals who comprise the masses in society, the reason why wickedness and evil is not confronted and dealt with is because it's not possible, because the individuals who comprise the masses will not confront the evil within them. Because the only way for evil to be present in society is for evil to be present within individuals. You can't have an evil society and no evil is present within individuals. Now, the Christian says, well, yeah, okay, that sounds correct, but not me, right? There's no possibility that there's any evil or wickedness going on within me. Okay, then what's the reason for being saved, right? Because the Christian will say, yeah, well, nobody's perfect. You know, there was a Jesus, and it was him. He was perfect, and so you can't be perfect. Okay, well, on that basis, tell me again how there can't possibly be evil within me. See, they're having it both ways. It's a religion, it's a predatory, evil, demonic religion, as they all are, that's having it both ways. And the people are unable to force these various mechanisms within society. They can't force it to not have it both ways because they won't contend with what's going on within themselves. Only after individuals go internally, bootstrap mind, body, and spirit within themselves, raise the level of whatever's going on in there, only then is it possible to potentially, and I'm not even saying it's possible even then, I'm saying this would be a prerequisite. Then perhaps individuals could confront what's going on in society. And I know this because I've done it. A person having bootstrapped within themselves, risen up and maybe let a little bit, another sliver of that little light of theirs shine. What's society going to say when they start talking about evil on display everywhere in society? They're going to say, well, okay, great. What's your solution? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Individuals must do better. And then just wait around and watch everybody continue to live on that donkey island from Pinocchio. Right. So this is very optimistic with respect to the transcendent potential of an individual, very pessimistic when you lump those motherfuckers together, right? Which apparently aligns up with some stuff George Carlin said on a talk show. I don't believe it was in his stand-up, at least not directly. So I don't know that I stole that from Carlin necessarily, but who knows? Hard to say. So there's a work to be done at all times, and I'm still going to bring this back to effectiveness. Moloch's machine, as we see, based on the goal I set out earlier, which I didn't quite get through the explanation of what Moloch's machine is doing. Right? It's at the level of effectiveness. It's been tasked with creating this world. Of course, it did not create it. So it's been tasked with operating and managing this delusory realm in such a way that at some point within a delusion of a time and a space and a location and a place, that the prosecution, right, antithesis, the inverse or the opposite of the assertion or the proposition or the thesis of what I am, as previously stated, it's looking the prosecution, in a something akin to a devil's advocate courtroom scene, is waiting to pause the game, say, "Hey, here's our evidence. Here's the data that within this delusory realm with elements of surrealism. I'm sorry, waking dreams, surrealistic unreality. Here's how the representation of the most of what is." And this is from the perspective of the prosecution. I'm not asserting this. They'd say, well, I guess supreme authority and the source of all life has been LARPing, right, in some way, because I have the data. Al Pacino's character has the data, right, in the movie to show in an accusatory fashion that, well, actually, and by asking the question, if these assertions are true, thesis, then how are these other things possible, such as evil and wickedness everywhere in the world? Now, here's Christian religion to say, oh, well, yes, because God's allowed it. It's this legalese, and it's set up to, trials and tribulations and all of this, Christ, and then the return of Christ, and the, treading of the wine press and all of this. It's all a bunch of nonsense, folks. Now, not the Jesus part, because remember, what I am is the way. What I am is the truth. What I am is the life. Okay. Well, having unlocked the achievement within the game of lies, the world of death, of true knowledge of self, I'm here to tell you what Jesus is ain't capable of coming back and destroying the wicked. Not capable of it. And the wicked destroy themselves. Why does a religion need to be created and a book written and a couple of thousand years of people adhering to these beliefs, apparently the most popular religion in the world, so we're taught, to undo evil? Evil undoes itself. Evil has no validity. Evil is a, as Jesus pointed out in the Bible, evil, antithesis is kingdom, Moloch's machine. These all represent void in such a way that that's a kingdom that cannot stand, right? Because it can't live. It's animated in a zombie-like fashion via the subversion of the creative force that's contained within the most super intelligent force of love and creation, force of power of love and creation possible, which can never be held back or in any way blighted or marred by this place. What I am can't have a black mark on it that it got here. See, that's what "in the world, not of the world" means. In other way, and it means other things. It's contextual, right? It's a parable, right? It works on multiple levels. What I am can't ever get anything but an A+ in this place. Now we're back to intelligent performance. What is intelligent performance? It's to avoid, right? It's backwards. It's inverted. Surprise, surprise, here in an inverted world. It's to not fall to the default state of man, which the default state of man, or the so-called fallen state of man, is that humans, because of being, this is my opinion, this last part's my opinion, because of being sacrificed to Moloch's machine, a psychology designed and installed, have a have all of these things, the child, right, the innocent child, subjected to all of these processes, so that they begin to identify with their captor, like for real. It's the individual choosing whether they realize it or not, to define themselves in relation to a world of death. It's to have the highest supreme authority, right, to define itself in relation to illegitimate authority, also known as a curse. And all this intergenerational curse talk and all of that's a different thing. This is the individual who, again, if they're possessed of Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity, that would represent blessing. It's individuals treating blessing symbolically as if it were a curse symbolically and literally, of course, as well. And that's what Moloch's machine is doing. It's gathering the data and it's measuring these things. And in each new moment, every discrete being here that could properly be said to represent this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, is being measured. The measure of that is being taken and logged and cataloged and is representative of evidence. And this is the idea of a so-called judgment. See, it's happening all the time. Everything I do, all my thoughts and all my actions for the entirety of what is known as this life, right? That's a lie. This is not a life. I'm not living a life here. Not strictly speaking. This is a death. This is attempting to live an animated death in this place, which I don't know, how is that even possible, right? Where nothing lasting can be created and left here. Nothing that lasts, right? Now, record of the performance of the individual, maybe that's going to last. Maybe that's the only thing that lasts here. But the individual, it doesn't even really exist in the way that I'm speaking here, because remember, that's an indivisible force. It's not possible to break off a little chunk of the most super intelligent force and power of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit that can't be individuated. That's why this place is a delusion, because that's only possible within imagination and delusion, right? In an illusory fashion. See, and that's what's going on here. Kill the messenger if you like. It's not going to do any good. And this is all for entertainment purposes only. So certainly the broadcaster, the discourser, understands that none of this is going to amount to a hill of beans anyway. Right. So if this represents a conundrum, what's the basis for the conundrum? It's not to be representative of the real thing, because remember, the real thing is not Coca-Cola. It's what I am. And what I am cannot experience anything, right? It can't fear these things. It can't worry about, well, what if I don't make the grade? What I am is incapable of anything other than an A+ on all tests. When properly identified, A+ is the only possible result. That's called supreme authority. That's called alpha and omega. That's called the cream will always rise to the top. That is a meritocracy. Actually, it's not, but interesting how America presents itself as a meritocracy. And then look at who climbs to the top of the meritocracy. Look at what these entities do. Right? Look at the frauds perpetrated. Look at the weak not protected. And everything I'm naming, just make a checklist and check it off. Yep, that's evil. 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 But then one of the many lies of this place is, well, yeah, you're right, Benton, but that all is outside of you, sir. Right? Well, it wasn't. It is now, as long as I'm properly identified, because when properly identified, what I am can't fall into error. See, and Moloch's machine understands that certain people will internally bootstrap. Certain people are set apart to God, right? Yes, certain people are set apart to the larger force, meaning in comparison. See, now I'm going to speak in a context. In comparison to the performances of the other individuals, because again, with solipsism, it's certainly possible that what Benton is, what Benton represents, is I'm the only representation of that, and everything else is some measure of a illusory simulation. See, and so a big part of the simulation would be, let's take, within a delusion, let's individuate this, and break off a chunk of an indivisible force, and let's see how it performs when antithesis has had its way with it from day one. After it's been sacrificed to Moloch's machine, and then it's been given a psychology, and it's been given a socialization process, and it's been taught to go out here and make itself into a good little corporate unit, right, to serve business transactions every moment of its life. Let's see how it performs then. And of course, built into the human is notions of sort of, looking at what other people are doing, following what other people are doing, mimicking what other people are doing, right? Needing to feel some type of way, feel secure, feel accepted, feel loved. Well, when improperly identified, the being has no fucking idea what love is in the first place, is what I would assert. So Moloch's machine already got him in the right place. Moloch's machine's already got him hemmed up from day one, hemmed up from day one. So of course, all of these corporations and society promotes these ideas of peace and love and harmony, and it's a mockery. The machine laughs and says, these people are so strongly identified with this place and with evil itself, they don't know what those things are because they're cut off from what? What is the notion of, people, the biblical notion of people who refuse to accept Christ as their Lord and Savior? It's like, well, yeah, and then this idea of judgment is what? It's to be cut off from the larger force. See, it's this fear, right, of not being able to go to heaven or whatever. See, now people certainly aren't behaving as if they believe this to be the case, right? But that's the notion, is that that's what's going on. No, that's not what's going on. Heaven or hell's right here, right now, folks. It's not, and I've talked about many times how the psychology of the individual is set up to put all potential things that seem negative into the future. So it's like, oh yeah, look, the economy is going to collapse. Like, what are you talking about? The economy's been in a state of collapse since I was born. I was born in 1975, 1977. When I was born in 1975, inflation was way more worser than it is now. Don't people know that 1965 to 1983 is a period of time known as the Great Inflation, and that's the Federal Reserve calls it that? No, because people don't know or care, and that's official fiction. They don't know or care. All they know is what's going on now. It's to only be concerned with continuing to live an evil, wicked life, while simultaneously being programmed to view it as wholesome and good on some level. But we see how these people are living. The royal we see how these people are living, and it ain't righteous. But remember, the religion says, well, there was a Jesus, he was righteous, so we need you to go out here and attempt to behave righteously. But because Paul wrote some stuff after we took his word for it on the road to Damascus, the secular Roman J, Saul of Tarsus, were taking his word for it, that he had this direct experience of Christ. And now he wrote that, well, regardless of the purity of Paul's intention, he ends up serving wickedness and evil anyway. So yeah, so try as you might, you can't express righteously. Again, cursing the blessing. If I go out here and accept that I can't ever possibly express righteously in each new delusory moment, or in any, actually not each new, in any new delusory moment, there's not one righteous man anywhere in any given delusory moment. That's not possible, because that can't be possible at the level of logic and reason, because then there's no spiritual war. If it's impossible for any individual in this place in any new moment to ever righteously bring forth the manifested truth and the essence of what they are, then there is no spiritual war, because there's only one side in that case, which would be evil. Pregnant pause for emphasis. Mic drop. So which is it? Is it a spiritual war, as the vast majority of so-called truthers agree? Or is it, well, yeah, um, or is it both? Cognitive dissonance. See? In 1984, George Orwell, the individual, the never-ending series of victories over one's own mind and memory, to contextually and situationally be able to believe whatever Moloch's machine needs the being to believe in order to get on with the business of, at the level of effectiveness. And Moloch's machine is operating very effectively. And one of the main ways it behaves and operates effectively is to prevent and preclude individuals from going within themselves and confronting the wickedness that exists. And wickedness exists in virtually every individual here, if not 100%, including whoever's listening to this. Whoever's listening live, shout out to the live listeners. And whoever's listening later, shout out to the replay crew. And it's not for Benton here to condemn these folks. They condemn themselves. They say, "Oh, well, you can't judge." And what people mean when they invoke the word judgment is usually they actually mean condemnation, because judge also means to form an opinion on, right? Well, we can't have a human judge, because as we see with MAGA and people who are from where I'm from, you get the wrong type of judge, just going he's just going to flip the board over. He's just going to wipe it all away and say, well, yeah, it's all wicked, destroy the wicked. And isn't that some sort of fantasy of, after the wicked are destroyed, it's all that's left is me, my family, my church, the people that look like me, that think like me and act like me. That's another psychological game. That's another that's another aspect of the mind control built into this place. Oh yeah, please come destroy the wicked, but I can't be wicked. My contained within and again, I don't want to make this about me, speaking from that person's perspective. Well, that's not possible, that evil and wicked, because remember, they're saved, right? The Pharisees and the Sadducees have signed off on, well, they've checked all the boxes. We got our checklist here, as if there's going to be a judgment. And there's going to be a Pharisee, a representative, standing off to the side with a clipboard and a checklist. And, well, yeah, Lord, yeah, we got evidence here. They checked all the boxes. And then, again, in this hypothetical scenario, wouldn't the Lord be saying, well, but what about all this other stuff? What about how they performed? Oh, no, no, no. We gave them a book that said, check all these boxes and you're good. And now you're cleared for evil, cleared for takeoff, right? Yeah, cleared for takeoff to go fly around like a bunch of monkeys in service of evil and Moloch's machine, right? And if you think this place don't have a sense of humor, you're crazy, because I'm almost laughing thinking about it that way. Fools, in league with fools. So yeah, let Benton go out here and make his way in the world, make something of himself in relation to this world of death, and align himself with a bunch of fools to make some money. Dead pieces of paper. Who can gather up the most dead pieces of paper? Render unto Caesar, let the dead bury the dead. People don't even know what render unto Caesar means. They think it means got to go out here and slave away for corporations, make rich people richer. And well, how are we going to pay for the roads then? How are we going to pay for the? I don't know, man. What size potholes have you crashed into lately? You ever gotten a big rig and crashed into them potholes? You ever drove for 3 straight hours and perfectly spaced in the road is a gigantic pothole that y'all can't detect in your car, but in a big rig going down the road, da-doom, da-doom, da-doom on a regular interval. And why is that? It's because there was an amount of money allotted to build the road, right? And then, as always happens, it ran over budget, right? And whatever it ran over budget, the politicians stole all of that, but then they were just a little too greedy, and they stole enough of the other money that the road wasn't able to be constructed properly. Okay. So how are we going to pay for the roads? You're not paying for them now. 100% of the money that you think is going to pay for your roads is not going to pay for the roads. Clearly, just go drive the roads and then tell me again how the roads they're not being paid for now. See, do you see the psychological prison? Do you see the trap? It's again, it's an internalization that's required. See, that's confronting the evil within. Confronting the evil within is somebody telling me, oh, you're saying don't go slave away for corporations, don't make a bunch of money to then pay taxes, right? Render unto Caesar. And no, what Benton is saying is the first time he suggests maybe that there's another way. The first question Benton gets asked is, how do we pay for the roads? And I just use logic and reason I internalized within society and said, well, that's not even happening in the first place. So what are you talking about? And some will say, oh, well, the roads are fine where I'm at. Yeah, okay, great. Good for you. I'm talking about the whole country. See, and each, we can pick out any aspect of society and just do that loop I just done. We can just go through the loop, right? We can go down the fucking conga line of copes, writing that down. Oh my goodness. Another Benton original. Conga line of cope. Yeah. Mm. At the Copacabana. At the Copacabana. And again, this place is making fun of you in real time, and you don't even know it. It's this place is never. If you are possessed of the Nancy Pelosi MS-13 spark of divinity, this place is never not mocking and ridiculing and laughing at you and making fun of you. But as long as you are identified with the validity of this place, meaning all that Moloch's machine has one care and one care only at the level of effectiveness. Are you, dear listener, as an individual, properly identified within yourself? Yes or no? Because that's what Moloch's machine is measuring in each new. Now it's here, now it's gone. Now it's here, now it's gone. Now it's here, now it's gone. What are you doing? Because whatever you're doing in each one of those now it's here, now it's gone, it either serves the Most High, or it serves or thesis, or it serves death and destruction, antithesis. And in order to have supreme authority and the source of all life as thesis, contained within that force must be the potential for the opposite or the inverse or antithesis that must exist. And hence this place, right? Here we are. Here we all are again. And iniquity is ubiquitous. And predators everywhere preying on the weak. And if your grandmother or your grandfather is in such a mental state, or has a savings, and if they get lonely because nobody's coming and visiting them, and nobody's, helping them out, right? The extended family, Moloch's machine probably built up the idea of an extended family. But because we're all taught official fiction, it was tribes and it takes a village type shit and all of this, that whatever that book was that Rogan kept going on and on about. I think it might have been called Tribes, but either way, well, that has changed and progressed to, the post-war period. That was the glorification of the nuclear family, the white picket fence, 1.5 or 2.5 kids, mother, father, 2.5 kids, white picket fence, Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver, all of that. See? And then people are so foolish they can't understand that that's what Moloch's machine needed people. That's how Moloch's machine needed people to perform at that time, to build the country up to what? Why was the country built up? Well, in part, how can a society be maintained at a level of collapse if it's not built up at some point? It has to be built up variously in order for it to be maintained in a state of collapse. And it's obviously, provably, uh, observably, society is operated at a state of collapse. Otherwise, how could Benton have been perusing a book section in a Goodwill and found a book that says how to plan for and deal? And again, I'm just remembering the title, how to, more or less, what to do about the fact that all the banks are about to crash and collapse and the entire financial system is about to be undone. And the book was published in like 1985. Remember, it would have been written during that, the economic woes, right? But that's all been memory hold, and now you got Gen Zers and other folks looking at the past as if it was some fucking great boom time, and just, some version of the Roaring Twenties or whatever. Well, the Roaring Twenties weren't all that. The Depression came, right? The 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s weren't all that. I was there. I remember what it was like. Are you crazy? Well, yeah, of course. See, but because it seems less bad than today. And then now Gen Z, now we have the biblical idea of, families turned against each other, mothers against sons, what the whole thing, whatever it says in there. Well, Now Gen Z is grumbling because they can't get on with their lives. They can't even move out of mommy and daddy's house, or actually mommy's house. And then you got boomers saying, well, well, in my day, you just worked a little harder. Yeah, things have changed. That was in the building it up phase. Bozos. This is no longer the building it up phase. Meanwhile, it's always in a state of collapse. And and people were happy just to have a fucking maybe a halfway decent workplace back then. Oh, you mean it's air conditioned, right? Instead of what? Uh, Johnny Cash's parents in Arkansas as sharecroppers. I'm sure that shit sucked, man. Well, that's what led to the boomers, right? How old is Johnny Cash was a boomer, wasn't he? Or was he silent generation? I don't fucking know. People don't even know the history of this stuff, and they're operating based on, well, yeah, the boomers ruined everything and they had it made on Easy Street. I don't know, man. How many old boomers are out here with no fucking money, ain't got a pot to piss in, trying to live on Social Security and food banks and whatever's left over at the food bank? Because now apparently the middle class, which doesn't even exist, now they're there. Because why? Because social media, the graven image upheld before Moloch, is based on consumption and spending. And remember, consumption and spending, all of this must continue to expand. The economy has to continue to grow in order for this to continue to operate, right? So it has to keep getting larger and larger and larger. See, never ending expansion, because that's the only way for rich people's wealth to continue to continuously expand. And if a rich person's wealth does not expand in each new moment, they don't know who they are. They're going through an existential crisis and they can't feel comfortable and secure. And they're the administrators on behalf of antithesis. See, they work for the one who's supposedly running this place, Christians. See, and their master is making sure that they feel some type of way, safe and secure and supported. See, he's taking care of them. And this is probably the premise for the movie I haven't seen, called Devil's Advocate, where it's like, well, what's the other guy doing in the scenario? Is he taking care of his people? Well, yes, but not in a way that Moloch's machine would find to be a proper result. Not in a way that looks like a graven image to uphold before Moloch, at the level of what? Branding, products, marketing, advertising, consumption, spending, debt, the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions. Go out here through assertion, aggression, and dominance, the yang form only. Grab the bull by the horns, leave your mark on the world, make this place your bitch, and get rich or die trying. Right. Well, that, and while simultaneously everything I just described is death, is representative of death. Again, oh, we're back to cursing one's blessing, which is the only thing Moloch's machine cares about. Is at the level of real world, and it's not even real world, but at the level of real world effectiveness, right? What's being honored and what's being cursed? Well, curse is being honored by blessing being treated as if it were a curse, right? Because what's my life going to look like? Well, it looks like broadcasting from the back seat of a Nissan Versa that I slept in, right? Parked on the streets of Los Angeles. And people will say, well, of course, that's his fault because he won't go out here at this time, at least, and get a job, right? He must be lazy, right? Oh, but Jeff Bezos, he's got to be the hardest worker. Elon Musk, well, then he's got to be the hardest worker. See, Donald Trump, he's got to be the hardest worker, and I must be the laziest, right? And let's forget about evidence to the contrary. The fact that people born into wealth are the laziest. Nobody in society is lazier than rich people. Are you crazy? What's the point of being rich if you got to go out there and do shit that you don't want to do? Meanwhile, how much time and effort and energy and resources has Benton put into doing a whole bunch of bullshit that was difficult, stressful, and a bunch of nonsense on some level, right? That people call work. And I'm here to tell you, sitting in front of a motherfucking computer ain't work. Now, is it a way to stress oneself out? Is it a way to drain one's brain? Right? Is it a way to, yeah, of course, it's not work. Work is a formula from physics, right? And the fact is, in the older times, people were doing a whole lot more work as defined by physics, meaning actual toil under the hot sun or, in the cold winter, right? And that's been treated by Moloch's machine as if that's virtuous. It's not virtuous. Now, it's arguably healthier for the individual to live that way, to be outside, right? And to be physically using their bodies, right? But in service of who? In service of what? When it's in service of industrial society and fat cats, lazy fat cats, the pigs from Orwell's Animal Farm, if I'm remembering that correctly. But remember, because the pigs understand the propaganda machine and they understand the psychology, the pigs, right, administrators, apparatchiks, right, they're the lazy ones. The horse from Animal Farm is the one that does all the work, and we see how the horse was treated like a fool, like the fool that he was. In the story of Animal Farm, they treat the worker like as the fool that he is. So yeah, Benton here could solve some of his day-to-day life issues by going back to truck driving yet again. And you know how Benton will be treated? Like the fool that he is. And I'm not calling myself a fool, I'm saying that would be foolish to do, and I might still do it, but I'll do it with the knowledge that I'm making a fool out of myself, because and here, what have we seen? What have we seen, especially since the pandemic? Well, this whole evil, wicked system, like a leviathan rising from the depths, it came to the surface and showed itself. And that represents a bell that cannot be unrung. And this last job was the first time I really understood, oh, these people believe that I am, as a truck driver, again, I can't say I am, scratch that. That's an inappropriate use of the I am. From their perspective, I'm not worthy of their respect, because no respectable person would go drive a truck for a living. But what does Moloch's machine say? Oh, this is, keeping America moving. Oh, yeah, keeping America moving. Boy, howdy. And meanwhile, I can go find old time truckers and they'll happily tell you, oh, yeah, they made more money in the early 80s than truck drivers make now. More money. And that's not even adjusting for inflation. They're just saying their paychecks were bigger in the early 80s or the mid 80s or whatever. See? Because let's not forget, corporations will have access to labor at the price that they choose. And how can corporate profits continue to escalate to the point where now the system itself claims that corporate profits are growing and expanding at double the rate that the rest of the economy is growing and expanding? Well, that only happens by people doing the same jobs for less money. And how is that accomplished? Oh, let's bring a bunch of people here from other countries who are willing, because again, the corporation will have the labor at the price it sets, period, end of story. And if it has to bring people from other countries, it will be done. See? Benito Mussolini's concept of the state, from the perspective of the state, there's nothing that's not the state, including you and including the foreigners, once they enter into the state. Now they're part of the machine. See? So fodder for the operation of the machine. So these people I work for, and I don't even view it that way, these people that I would allow to employ me in truck driving, they're not able to treat me with respect. Now they'll pretend, in the orientation, the guy, to my face and the face of another driver who was being hired at the same time in the orientation, said, we're like family here. It took everything in me to not get up and walk out the motherfucking door right then. And again, that's another mockery, right? Because I know, what are you talking about? Family. Are you crazy? Well, they did treat me like family. And that's another mockery of people who believe that there's any such thing as familial love. There's not. Because how can you have loving families? And I've already made the case that these people don't know what love is. They think that that the lack of fear, guilt, and shame is love and acceptance, right? Because how can somebody who's improperly identified with the validity of this place and the authority of this place, that precludes them from experiencing love and acceptance? I hate to break it to you. Now, do they have they ever experienced it fleetingly here and there? Yeah, probably, if they are what I am, right? Meanwhile, what I am is not capable of experiencing anything but love and acceptance. It is love and acceptance. It is those things. It has to be those things. Otherwise, antithesis can't create a machine to measure the output in each new delusory moment and then to say, well, look at it, curse and its blessing. It has to be this way. See? And then you get into the, well, what loving God would do this? Well, the loving God ain't doing it. That's the whole thing. It's not because it can't, and it can't conceptualize it. Much like Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk being entrusted with the wealth of the family, well, that would be representative of the supreme authority and the source of life of the larger force. See, Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk within a delusion, but 100% identified properly at all times, some version of Jesus, right? At least part of the Jesus story, lacking the ability to identify with anything other than his own nature. See, that's the story of Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk. So the early part of the story is it's an acknowledgement that he's in possession of, symbolically within the story, what the story tells you is the greatest possible wealth. He has that. Everybody knows he has it, and they're going around and they're giving him a mission, right? They're actually inserting him into a delusion, and then they're trying to warn him from day one about the potential calamities and catastrophes that could befall him if he doesn't play the game of lies correctly, and if he's, lacking guile, and if he's too naive, then somebody's going to rob him or they're going to trick him out of his wealth. See, they're going to convince him to curse his blessing, right? Now, why did Jack trade the coins for the magic beans? Because what Jack is incapable of not knowing that the coins have no value, right? In comparison to what Jack knows himself to be, right? And then what is the beanstalk? Ascension. He ascends up out of the delusion, presumably. I don't remember the entire story. I don't even remember what happened after he climbed the beanstalk. Oh, but now I can be attacked, and now Benton can be made the performer in the context of the performance. Now we can make fun of him, because he didn't memorize and completely adhere to the story potentially. Well, I'm abstracting, folks. I'm abstracting various parts of the story to make my point. I don't have to reconcile it with the rest of Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk. I must reconcile my ideas at the level of logic and reason, not some fictional story. Same with the Bible. You talking about people have treated me like I have to, that because I've referred to the book of Job, I need to reconcile the entirety of my discourse. What on a fake book in a fake chapter in a fake book, or a fake book in a compendium, if that's the right word, called the Holy Bible in the English language, the King James Version. That's provably fucking fraudulent and bullshit, much of it. They say, what do you mean? Well, just the writings of Paul. Isn't that like, once we get past the Gospels of Christ, isn't that pretty much the rest of the book? Other than, I guess, Revelation, maybe a couple of exceptions. Isn't it mostly Paul? Well, that's a bunch of fraudulent bullshit lies. There's somebody in the so-called truth community that wrote a fucking damn near 1,000-page book about that maybe one person's bothered to read. Apparently, I certainly didn't bother to read it. I don't know that it's necessary to read it. If the being is able to demonstrate the comprehension and the understanding of the material, what's the difference? Why do I need to read the book if I'm able to demonstrate these things? See? And again, treat the blessing as if it were a curse. The wisdom bestowed, right? So if I'm foolish enough to internalize these spiritual attacks, that would be treating the wisdom that I've been blessed with as if it were a curse. I'm not finna do that, partner. That's not going to happen. Not on my watch. So the larger point, individuals that comprise the masses. So the masses can't deal with evil. So if people are confused and they're scratching their head and they're like, "What's all this lawlessness? What's up with this moral condition of these people? Why are they behaving this way?" Well, it's all written in the Bible, right? The Christian, but doesn't it say that what the last days are going to look like, and how many people claim this to be the last days? I don't even think that's a thing. One of the advantages of being born into a doomsday mind control cult called the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I never joined it. I never believed it. I tried, right? It's been a great advantage in some ways. In some ways, right? I can't fall for the bullshit now. Not that bullshit anyway. See, because Jesus wants you to pay your taxes apparently. And why did he make that statement that people have tried to misconstrue and to pay your taxes? It's because a bunch of Pharisees were following him around trying to catch him in some legalese, and he knew that that's what they were doing. So he strategically answered in a way to not hem himself up because he had a mission in the context of the story. In the context of the story. And that last part will be lost. And then if any of this is repeated, it will just be, oh, well, Benton believed that the Bible is correct and all of this. I know what I hold dear within myself. I'm not even willing to sign off on the historicity, right? Again, within me, on my behalf, I know what's up because I've said it before, I'll say it again. What I'm able to speak about on these broadcasts represents maybe 10% of my understanding of these spiritual matters. Representative of what? Spiritual genius. Yeah, self-declared, not Benton the performer, not Benton the psychology, not Benton the um, history and traits and characteristics. No, what I am is representative of spiritual genius. See, so maybe 10% of that genius is able in this limited form to be conveyed, and then there's some percentage of what is the individual able to take in. What 10 to 30% of what of the 10% I'm saying, and I know math doesn't quite work this way, but now we're down to 1 to 3%. Again, that's why none of this will amount to a hill of beans and it represents entertainment. It's because individuals mostly are not working towards an understanding of this at a level within themselves of mind, body, and spirit. Because just the intellectual side of it, of the three, is not going to get us, won't get you there. It's got to be all three. So whichever one is lagging between mind, body, and spirit, that's going to be the weak link. That's what will hold the individual back. And so individuals are unwilling, and increasingly unable at any sort of competent level of addressing what wickedness may exist within them. And imagine being so insane and crazy and mind controlled to acknowledge how evil and wicked society is while simultaneously honestly believing that it's not possible for any wickedness to be contained within the individual. Are you crazy? And people don't even know that they believe that. And people say, well, I don't believe that. And I say, well, I'm watching your performance and I'm telling you that that's what, and again, not you, the listener, my apologies. I'm telling them that that's what they believe because I know the belief system of an individual if by observing the performance. And a person inside of themselves they can think that they have a certain belief. And then the behavior is the opposite of what they think that they believe. And then when asked, hey, what do you believe? They will tell you what they think they believe internally and will lie to themselves about the things they've actually done externally. And who does that serve? It serves Moloch's machine, and it serves antithesis, and it serves death and the lovers of death. And this realm rewards lovers of death. And in some way, that's why Benton is sitting here in a Nissan Versa. But the Nissan Versa, see, The fact that that's even here, right? You know, the clothing, the food. You know, Benton has everything he needs. Benton never lacks in this realm. It's only ever at the level of want and preference. Because what do want and preference tie into? That ties into viewing oneself in relation to a world of death in the context of games of lies, right? See, because that Psalm 23, it don't say nothing about, being well adorned and having an easy life. It's talking about walking through the valley of the shadow of death and all of this. You know, does anybody concern themselves with if a billionaire has what they need at the level of resources? Well, what I am is you take a billion billionaires can't add up to can't hold my a billion billionaires couldn't carry my jock. Think about that. A billion billionaires couldn't carry my jock, meaning what I am. Infinite, immeasurable, all powerful, the source of everything that can properly be said to be alive. And that's not this world. This world can't be properly said to be alive. They say, what do you mean? That the grass and the trees and the birds and the dogs and the animals? Yeah, they're animated, folks. They're dead. That's death animated. That's animated death. Anything that can trace its origins to this place, it originates. Its nature and its origination is death. Unless it is possible to originate with the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible, and then to degenerate vibrationally low enough to then become a dead thing at the level of mind, body, and spirit. And again, thankfully, I don't have the IQ to really properly parse a lot of that out. What's the difference anyway? From my perspective, who cares? Because Benton's bringing it back to effectiveness. Just like Moloch's machine is only concerned with effectiveness, same thing here, buddy. Fighting fire with fire, burning down the house. Bully the bully. Bully the bully. It's the only thing that works. They can't stand the heat. Antithesis can't stand the heat. That's why it always puts the heat on. When an entity or a one side of a spiritual war, when it understands that it can't stand the heat, what's it do? Well, it applies heat to the enemy at all times. It's never not attacking the enemy. It never doesn't have its sights set on the enemy. See, and one of those attacks is, hey, make the world a better place, play your position, hope, put your hope in. Well, things are going to get better. Oh, it's all going to work out. It's all going to work out for the better. Just keep on grinding. I'm watching channels where people got homeless people who've made it to the age of 50 and you know through a series of unfortunate events, now they're living in their car, uh finally got, just the whole story of life, right? Well, what LARPs is life. And people will defend that system. People will defend the system that creates those situations where people are living this way. And then where is the acknowledgement that what leads to that is evil and wickedness and iniquity? And it's because why is society operating with these increasing, levels of pervasive evil, right? It's because individuals who will not uncover and contend with the evil and wickedness that exists within their own energy spheres, they are incapable of going outside of their power centers in a herd mentality, grouping up with other humans, and then resolving evil. It's not possible. First, the individual must clean up their own house, and then they can try to address society. And that's in the Bible. First, remove the large imperfection out of your eye, and then you can clearly see to address the smaller error in somebody else's eye. Why is that in the Bible? It's saying, hey man, if you want to be part of this solution, and I'm not even saying there's a solution, but the first step is whatever's obstructing the being's vision, right? At the level of, uh, you know, service, and an idea of redemption and heaven and all of this. Well, step one is deal with your own shit before you go away from where because you have the power to, there's something obstructing your vision, metaphorically, you have the power to deal with that. But what does Moloch's machine instruct you to do and support you in doing? Oh, well, to externally go away from your source of power and blame Democrats. And well, I go to church and we're all, some version of a holy roller. And boy, there can't be no wicked spirits in our church, right? Oh, there's no wicked spirit of homosexuality in y'all's church. You gonna tell me that? Huh? That there's no same-sex couples in your church? They say, well, no, not in our church. Okay, well then, uh, is your church part of a larger organization? And if so, is there somewhere in that larger organization where it's accepted? You see the point I'm making? But then they want me to swallow the Bible whole, or swallow the story of Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk whole, but then they won't even acknowledge the wickedness that exists within their own spheres, whether that's a church or a family or a community, because they can't. Because until they resolve the wickedness within, these individuals are incapable of resolving the wickedness without. Now they can pretend to, and you can see what the government's doing, and you can see the people that support what the government's doing are people who cannot deal with the wickedness within themselves, and now they're in a holier than thou way, aligning themselves with Moloch's machine's efforts to do what? To resolve the problems that it's created for its own purposes at the level of effectiveness to win a spiritual war. Are you crazy? And Benton, uh, demonstrating the highest level of thinking in the so-called truth community, is made sport of and mocked and ridiculed. So be it. Demons, do your worst. Demons, do your worst. Because what I am can't be bested by no demons. What I am can't be bested by antithesis. What I am can't be marred or marked or in. There's nothing this place can do to me. They say, well, sure it can. Bring it on. I'd love for him to come scoop me up and do God knows what. And see, I used to fear that. See, and it's not a challenge. I'm not asking for it. This is not a manifestation, and this is not an asking ye shall receive. That's rhetoric. I'm being rhetorical. See, hopefully, the powers that be understand the difference. I'm not asking for that. I'm saying I'm prepared for that in an art of war sense. First, the warrior places himself beyond the possibility of defeat. So to psychologically within the delusory experience based on Benton the performer in the context of the performance and the human psychology and the will, right, within delusion, Benton has committed fully to whatever Benton has to go through. Bring it the fuck on. Bring it the fuck on. And part of it is like, hey, can we get this over with? What's all this waiting around? Well, who who gets the benefit of the waiting around? The enemy. The enemy is like, well, yeah, if we make this motherfucker wait long enough, he might lose patience. Like my 90-year-old grandmother who's just confused as to why the Lord hadn't taken her yet. And the Lord hasn't taken her yet because antithesis, it says, well, yeah, if we give her enough time, maybe she will do some version of cursing her own blessing or treating her blessing like a curse. That's all it cares about. They say, well, why? What? An old lady in Arkansas? Yeah, an old lady in Arkansas. Hmm. Absolutely. And I suspect it views old Benton here the same way. But old Benton understands the tactics of the enemy. Benton understands the strategies of the enemy. And Benton thwarts the attacks of the enemy and the snares and the traps. How? The quickening spirit. No matter what happens, what I am can always vibrate faster. That's its secret. It can always vibrate faster. And all attacks must be aimed at a specific frequency in a spiritual war. So here come the attack. Okay, vibrate higher. No weapon formed against what I am shall prosper. That's what that means. Because what I am can always take evasive action at the level of quickening the vibrations, the vibrational frequency. Simple. But is it? Because it's not simple if a person's going to try to live like everybody else. It's not simple if one needs to feel loved and accepted by a world that lacks both love and acceptance. And if what you are is what I am, that is love and acceptance. All love and acceptance is contained within the larger force of what I am. And I can only even think about it as a larger force because I'm speaking in the context of this vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, where we only measure in money. And it's because what Benton is speaking on don't make no money, then it's null and void. And I accept that. That's fine. That's an opinion. And it's a biased opinion. It's a biased viewpoint in service of evil itself, death itself, the love of death. That's another curse of a blessing. If the source of love and life itself is behaving in such a way as to treat death as if it was lovable, right? I mean, come on. Blasphemy in the Holy Spirit. How about that? Of course, most of these folks, I suspect, are going to be in the I never knew you camp, right? Meaning, well, they never identified with the larger force pretty much ever, right? So I think that's what the I never knew you meant from the Bible, in the last days, the people calling out, we did this in your name, we did that in your name, trying to refer to the checklist. Well, we checked all the boxes, Lord, we're confused. And then the Lord is like, well, I don't even know who you are, partner. Because if you ain't what I am, who needs you? I ain't got time for that. I'm too busy creating and expanding and loving and abundance. I'm too busy performing all of these things. Right? At the level of supreme authority. So that's your problem. Why are you asking me? I don't even know who's talking to me right now. You're gonna have to explain yourself. I don't know I can't even conceptualize this. See, what I am has no concept of these lesser forms of energy. That's why this place is happening, and that's why the spiritual warfare is happening. Because antithesis must exist. And like I talked about, Job chapter 1 is that the most super intelligent force and power of love and creation not being able to conceptualize these catastrophes. It wants to be helpful, antithesis, and it notices antithesis in the story of the book of Job. And it's like, hey, antithesis, what are you up to? And antithesis answers and says, seeking whom I may devour. And the most super intelligent power and force of love and creation possible wants to be helpful. That's its nature. That's all it knows how to do. Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, bebopping around, yippee skippy, not a care in the world. So it's like, okay, well, have you considered my servant Job? Because I know what Job is, because Job is what I am. See? So yeah, have at him. Here you go. And just from a strategery, just from a legal standpoint, if Job somehow fails to perform intelligently, fuck him. Who needs him? We don't know him. We never knew him. Then we thought we knew him. We didn't know him. That's what everybody here who's possessed of Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity is doing. They're either a known quantity and identifiable and belong to supreme authority, or they don't. And if not, fuck them. They're of this world. See, if that, then it must be that their origination is traceable to this place. See, because only a being that could, trace their origination to this world of death and playing a game of lies would choose to serve death and evil and destruction and wickedness. Meanwhile, when I see the world, when I look at what's going on in America, I see the lovers of death performing in service of evil. And it's can't plausibly be dressed up to and made to appear any other way. And people can say, oh, make the world a better place, be the change you want to see in the world. Yeah, anything to avoid addressing the wickedness that almost assuredly exists in every single person out here, myself included. Right now, the difference between old Benton and most of these other folks is that Benton has spent a great deal of time dealing with the wickedness within, and on the heels of the unlocking of the achievement within the game of true knowledge of self, being rewarded, although perhaps not directly, but being rewarded for his efforts with leveling up. And here's how Benton knows who his friends are and who his enemies are. And remember, what I am doesn't make enemies. This place makes an enemy of what I am. And the servants of this place, when I allow them to be in a relationship, however that may be, doesn't have to be acquaintanceship, friendship, whatever that is. If they don't enthusiastically applaud and cheer each level up as Benton is internally bootstrapping, nobody's congratulated me on unlocking the achievement of true knowledge of self. Not one person. They said, wow, well done, man. That's a job well done. But I thought this was a country that honors hard work. We're talking about 15 motherfucking years of nose to the grindstone with spiritual practice to unlock the achievement. Oh, but you're not going to take my word for it. But Christians will take Saul of Tarsus's word for it. The secular Roman J. See, I'm a pretty good poker player, folks. Pretty good poker player. See, that's this realm sort of tipping its hand. It's showing something about the strength of its holdings in the poker game, right? It's tipping its hand a little bit there, right? And I've used the poker analogy before, that this realm will never give up, because even at the showdown, antithesis knows if I table my hand, it's always the nuts. If it tables its hand, it always loses, meaning I win the pot. So, but if it can trick me into folding my cards and throwing them away, again, treating the strongest possible hand as if it's beatable, then it can still claim the pot. And we've seen this in poker, where even though people get to the showdown and don't have the winning hand, they still are able, under certain circumstances, to drag the pot, to win the hand. Well, I'm all in. I'm committed. See, and if we're going to stick to a strictly no limit hold'em example, you know, but see, I don't have pocket ace. It can't be pocket aces, because my opponent could have pocket aces. See, it has to be some other form of poker for the analogy to work. But either way, by the time we get at every step of the way, here's what it means. Here's what true knowledge of self is to know that what I am is the highest possible poker hand at all times. And it can't be tied, right? We can't, we can't split the pot. I got the highest possible hand no matter what. So what would that be in draw poker? The royal flush, right? 5-card draw. Well, even that can be tied. The other person can have a royal flush. See? So I don't even know. I haven't completely worked out how the analogy, but maybe the poker analogy doesn't work. Either way, I believe the point is made. See, I believe it's made. And that's, part of figuring this out also. But yeah, and I want to hammer this home. Nobody's congratulated me or thought, man, that's really awesome. Right. Wow, great. My mom kind of did, but you know, whatever. But I mean, in the so-called truth community, and that's how part of the way I figured out, because I am dense, right, and a bit gullible and naive. That's how I figured out. Oh, these folks actually think I'm a joke. I'm treated. The so-called truth community considers me to be a joke, right? uh, Worthy of mockery and ridicule. Seriously, because they can't cheer the level up. Back to the truck driving example. I can't, if I go back to truck driving, there's no chance of me being treated with any modicum of respect or proper treatment. Because if I was respectable and worthy from their perspective, if I was respectable and worthy of proper treatment, I wouldn't be there driving a truck for them or for anybody, right? It's provably laughable and ridiculous that a human being would choose to do these things. See, now the people who are new to the country, who don't necessarily work for the companies I work for, well, that's probably a little bit different of a thing, because it's not quite as shameful. It's not quite as is disreputable, because they come from these certain areas, and all they're trying to do is work and provide for their families, and the so-called American dream. And Benton is done with the part of life where he gives a flying fuck about what anybody else thinks about whether he goes out here and hard works today or not. I'm probably going to end this stream at some point in the near future, and then I'm going to go do my little bit of chores, and then pretty soon I'll have eaten, and whatever I was going to do, and it'll be coming up on like 1 o'clock, and I'll just shut it down and get fucking high, get high for the rest of the day, right? Because I'm in the weed smoking phase. And then pretty soon I'm not going to be in a weed smoking phase, because I may very well be right back to putting the kick me sign on my back and letting the trucking company and a trucking industry kick me for a period of time, and put the dunce cap on me, or the spinner hat or whatever, and laugh at me in exchange for Federal Reserve notes, and even more so than that, a place to live, live in a big rig. Right. And I don't know which way it's going to go. It doesn't even really matter probably, but that's where we're at. And to be constantly attacked for lacking hard work, right? Um, but I know what I've done, even outside of the context of what I am, just what I've performed in this realm at the level of hard work, right? I'm not going to be gaslit into internalizing that there's something wrong with me. There's not. It's an evil, wicked system of things, and it's evil and wicked because individuals will not go into their internal space and uncover and confront the wickedness that absolutely exists within each individual. Because especially a Christian who asserts, well, there's no wickedness in me. Oh, okay, you're basically saying you're on a level of Jesus then. Oh, no, 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 I didn't say that. Okay, so which is it? Is there wickedness inside or not? Okay, if the person will actually acknowledge some possibility of wickedness, then why is the individual not dealing with it? Because the individual can't resolve the wickedness within them and still be able to conform to society's expectations and uphold the status quo at the level of social contracts. It's one or the other, folks. Man cannot serve two masters. See, the commitment has to be there. The choice must be made. But it's not a opt in and then, oh, well, we've opted into the correct side in the spiritual war, and now we kick back. No, you opt into the correct side of the spiritual war, and Moloch's machine attacks and attacks and attacks and attacks and attacks, and society gaslights and gaslights and gaslights and gaslights, because society blasts the fear, the guilt, and the shame, and says, uh, we need you to uphold this status quo, and we need you to uh, you know, operate based on social contract, and we need you behave within peer groups at the level of conformity. And that's what virtually everybody does. And that's why society and America and the masses are incapable of addressing the evil in society. They're not able to do that. So all efforts, disempowered efforts, will only ever what? Serve Moloch's machine. Even if they can be dressed up to, oh, well, we're going to go out to the park today and hand out fucking socks and granola bars to the homeless, or, we're feeding the homeless, or we're doing this, or we're doing that. Well, that's the same level of evil out here. But, thanks for the socks and the granola bars, but it's not addressing the evil. It's not addressing wickedness. It's not addressing old folks and the weakest amongst us being preyed upon. It's not addressing any of that. That doesn't protect anybody's, the elderly. That doesn't support the elderly, right? It doesn't support people who can't fend for themselves. Blame them, right? It's their fault. If they had worked a little harder, they wouldn't be vulnerable. See, that's system speak. And anybody out here that says system speak is what? What is somebody out here that can't shut the fuck up about system speak? That's a sysagenant. That's an agent of the system, whether they know it or not. The people who always victim blame. Oh, well, that's their fault. And I used to be this way. They should have made different choices. Well, yeah, woulda, coulda, shoulda. I'm talking about right and wrong. I'm talking about righteousness over evil, right? And I'm talking about what's the Bible say? How many times should we forgive our brothers or our sisters? But forgiveness is conditional, right? Or is it? I don't know. I have to ponder on that a little bit. I guess within this delusory realm, it's conditional, but meaning legal at the level of legalese. There are conditions at the level of legalese in the confess, repent, seek forgiveness, are forgiven scenario. So, and all these people that, something tragic happened in their life, they were victimized, and they say, well, I forgive. And my thing is, well, you can't until the person confesses, repents, and seeks forgiveness. There is no forgiveness. It's not, that's the wrong term. It's not somebody who was done wrong and just says, okay, well, I forgive them. No, it's the person who did the evil that is needing of forgiveness. The error is when that person gets themselves right and then a grudge is still held against them. It's not a victim who's been victimized and just decides, well, we're just going to let this go, right? How's that righteous? That's to that's to assist in the perpetration of evil is what that is. See, now we're getting into justice. There's no justice here. There can't be justice here because of the reasons I've outlined. There can't be justice. So people talk about, a justice system and, an eye for an eye and all of these things. There's no justice here. There can't be justice here in a world of death and games of lies. What is referred to as justice is a mockery. It's a mockery. Because what I am only knows justice. See? So to inhabit and in the past to have assisted in the perpetration of a realm that can't, under no circumstances, until individuals resolve their own state of wickedness inside of themselves, there's no possibility of justice. So, people talk about that they're lovers of peace and they're lovers of justice. Well, there's only one way to prove that. There's only one way to prove it. It's by finding anything that is anathema to peace within the individual and getting rid of it and addressing it and clearing it. And then through proper identification, looking for those times when the individual falls into improper identification and begins to create and perpetrate the evil yet again. Right. And are folks going to do that? Well, that's what Benton is doing, has been doing, and is going to continue to do it, with assuming that no, other people are not going to do that. I haven't met one yet, especially not one who grew up in the way I grew up. Haven't met one. That's probably not true, but practically speaking, it's not a thing. Say, oh well, I guess Benton is saying he's special. What I am is incapable of being anything but special. See, it answers all questions. The quickening spirit is just immediate. Again, the comforter, which is the Holy Ghost, is teaching me all things and bringing unto my remembrance. And what is that? That's gaslighting. Do you see? I just gaslight. I just went ahead and used gaslighting to attack my own argument, and then showed the defeat of the gaslighting in real time. Oh, but everybody's on my level, right? So there's no cheering of Benton's level up. It's the fact that he's demonstrating through his discourse, and it's not about Benton. It's just everybody always reveals themselves over time, right? And my commitment, Benton's commitment to Benton's service, Benton's path of progress, true knowledge of self, self-realization, spiritual practices, manifested truth. That's what's important, not how I'm met, not how I'm accepted or rejected by this world. Meanwhile, I'll end on this, and Lord knows I could continue preaching. And shout out to, what do we got here? We had like 26 concurrents, but it's funny. It was like 26, and then I looked down and it was 18. But either way, it doesn't really matter, right? I guess it got a little too arrogant, but that's fine. Doesn't matter. And again, this is entertainment, and none of this is going to amount to a hill of beans. And I'm not here to challenge anybody, right? Folks are simply not going to take up the challenge. This place has taken the measure of what humanity represents collectively, and it strategically understands that it's got a pretty damn good shot from its perspective in the context of the spiritual war, because Benton's time is limited. Okay. And there's this idea that there's all these older folks in the trades and all of this are retiring, and there's not enough young folks to replace them. It's kind of the same thing with Benton here. When Benton, the performer and the personality and the series of, the biography and the characteristics, when that's over with, who's taking his place? Right? Because you think about this Sodom and Gomorrah and all of this, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and it's like, hey, was it whoever it was in the story? I don't even remember. Was it Noah? I don't fucking know. Again, I'm not a Bible expert. Whoever it was, the group of people that entered into Sodom and Gomorrah, and then, God's like, hey, I'm destroying this. And they're pleading their case, like, well, and then God's like, hey, and again, I'm probably butchering the story, so this is from memory. It's like, well, if you can find 100, basically give us a chance. If we can find 100 righteous people, will you spare the city? And it's like, yeah, sure. And they come back, oh well, we couldn't find 100. What about the number keeps decreasing, and eventually it's like, all right, time to beat your feet, because here come the fire and the brimstone. So get the fuck out of here. And then Lot, it was Lot. Yeah, Lot's wife looking back and turning into a pillar of salt or whatever. Stone, salt, whatever it was. Turning back to, maybe in some, FOMO, right? Fear of missing out of, whatever Sodom and Gomorrah had to offer. And to quote the late, great Dick Gregory, if God don't destroy this wicked motherfucker, he owes that Sodom and Gomorrah an apology. Yeah, this is Sodom and Gomorrah on steroids. What we got out here. Hmm. Oh yeah. And why? And why was Sodom and Gomorrah in the condition it was in? Because the individuals within society were so given over to evil and wickedness, they refused to address the evil and the wickedness within them. They wouldn't do so because they need an incentive. There has to be something in it for them. See, that's to be in the world, not of the world. That's to be in the world. That's to be identified with the world. See, Lot's wife turned and looked back. Why? Why? Because she was identified with the world. She was identified with the delusion of Sodom and Gomorrah. And she wasn't, thus proving in that moment when it really mattered in her mission and her, I forget, there's a word for this, it doesn't matter, but her, shit. Well, the expectation, her instruction was to do a specific thing. And in order to do that, she needed to be properly identified. So as they were leaving, she proved where her uh, where her loyalties lay. She was improperly identified, meaning what? Meaning she was refusing to acknowledge and deal with the wickedness within her. So she got left with them instead of escaping. See? Again, the Comforter, which is the Holy Ghost, it interprets the Bible for me. That's how I know much of it is fucking fraudulent and a bunch of lies, gaslighting. Yeah. Hmm. All right, we're out. I'm just rambling at this point. Thanks for listening. Bye.